The worst part about being cheated on wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing everyone else seemed to know before I did. I found that out on a Friday night with a silver ring box in my jacket pocket and a stupid smile on my face. The stadium lights painted the parking lot in shades of white and gold as fans poured through the gates, their laughter carried by the cool October air. I stood there for a moment, looking up at the massive banner stretched across the arena entrance. The Wildcats were hosting the biggest volleyball match of the season, and my boyfriend, Tyler, had somehow convinced me that missing it would be a crime against sports. The truth was that I hated crowds. I hated traffic. I hated overpriced stadium food. But I loved Tyler, and for 3 years that had been enough to make me show up for things I never would have chosen myself. My fingers brushed the small velvet box hidden inside my pocket. The ring wasn't an engagement ring. Not exactly. It was a promise ring, something simple, something meaningful. Tyler had been talking about our future for months. Moving in together. Adopting a dog. Maybe even getting a place somewhere near the coast after graduation. Every conversation had made me believe we were building something real. Tonight was supposed to be special. At least, that's what I thought. The arena buzzed with energy. Music blasted from speakers. Fans waved signs. Vendors shouted over one another while the smell of popcorn drifted through the concourse. Tyler had texted me 30 minutes earlier. Running late. Meet me by the locker rooms. Love you. I smiled when I read it again. Love you. 2 words that suddenly felt heavier than they should have. I made my way through the lower-level hallway, passing team staff and security guards who barely noticed me. The closer I got to the locker room area, the quieter it became. The cheers from the court faded into distant echoes. My sneakers squeaked against polished concrete floors. I checked my phone. No new messages. Typical Tyler. Always late. Always making grand entrances. I rolled my eyes affectionately and kept walking. Then I heard laughter. Not unusual. Players and staff were everywhere. But something about the sound made me slow down. Familiar. Too familiar. I turned the corner. The world didn't stop. It didn't shatter. It didn't explode into dramatic movie music. Instead, everything became strangely clear. The hallway lights hummed overhead. Somewhere far away a whistle blew. A vending machine rattled as someone bought a soda. And standing near the partially open door of the visiting team's training room was Tyler. My Tyler. Except he wasn't alone. His hand rested against another man's shoulder. Their faces were inches apart. They were smiling at each other the way people smile when they think nobody is watching. The way people smile when they're happy. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. No, there had to be an explanation. There was always an explanation. Tyler noticed me first. His expression changed instantly. Not guilt. Not panic. Annoyance. That hurt more than anything. The other guy stepped back awkwardly. Tyler muttered something under his breath and ran a hand through his hair. For a second nobody spoke. I stood frozen, my pulse pounding in my ears. The ring box suddenly felt like it weighed 50 pounds. Riley, Tyler said, forcing a laugh. You weren't supposed to be here yet. I stared at him. Out of every possible thing he could have said, that was what he chose. Not sorry. Not let me explain. Just irritation. Like I had interrupted something inconvenient. My mouth went dry. What am I looking at? I finally asked. Tyler exchanged a glance with the other guy. A glance that told me more than words ever could. The silence stretched between us like a wire ready to snap. And then, from somewhere behind me, I heard footsteps approaching down the hallway. Fast. Confident. Getting closer. I didn't know it yet, but in less than 5 minutes, my entire life was about to change. The footsteps stopped a few feet behind me. I did not turn around immediately. I could barely breathe as I stared at Tyler and the stranger standing beside him. The ring box felt sharp against my palm. Tyler sighed dramatically, as if he were the one trapped in an uncomfortable situation. Look, Riley, he said, rubbing the back of his neck, this is not exactly how I wanted this conversation to happen. I laughed once. The sound surprised even me. It was not happy. It was not angry. It sounded hollow. Conversation? I asked. You mean the one where you explain why you were standing here with someone else? The other guy shifted awkwardly. At least he looked uncomfortable. Tyler did not. That somehow made everything worse. You are overreacting, Tyler said. Nothing was official. For a second, I genuinely thought I had misheard him. 3 years. 3 birthdays. 3 Christmas mornings. Hundreds of late-night phone calls. Plans for the future. And somehow none of it was official. The hallway suddenly felt too bright. Too cold. Nothing was official? I repeated quietly. Tyler shrugged. I think we both knew things were changing. I stared at him. No, I had not known that. I had spent the last 6 months saving money for a future he had promised me. I had spent the last 3 weeks planning tonight. I had spent the last 30 minutes carrying a ring in my pocket like an idiot. A movement behind me finally pulled my attention away. I turned. The man standing there was instantly recognizable. Mason Walker. Even people who never watched sports knew who he was. His face appeared on billboards, television commercials, and magazine covers. The captain of the Wildcats. The biggest name in college volleyball. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a team jacket, he looked completely out of place in the middle of my personal disaster. His expression was unreadable. Calm. Controlled. But his eyes moved briefly from me to Tyler, and something about that glance made the hallway feel smaller. Tyler straightened immediately. Mason, he said with an awkward laugh. Did not realize you were back here. Mason ignored him. Completely. Instead, he looked directly at me. Are you okay? The question caught me off guard. Not because it was complicated. Because nobody else had asked it. Not Tyler. Not anyone. Just him. I opened my mouth and discovered I had no idea how to answer. Was I okay? My boyfriend had just informed me that our relationship apparently existed only in my imagination. My future had collapsed in under 60 seconds. My chest felt hollow. No, I was definitely not okay. I am fine, I lied automatically. Mason studied me for a moment. It was the kind of look that made me feel seen in a way I was not prepared for. Then Tyler spoke again. Everything is under control. Mason finally glanced at him. It does not look under control. The silence that followed was uncomfortable enough to make my skin crawl. Tyler forced another smile. This is private. Then maybe it should have stayed private, Mason replied. His voice never rose. He did not need it to. Tyler's smile disappeared. I could feel tension building between them, though neither man moved. The stranger beside Tyler quietly excused himself and disappeared down the hallway. Smart decision. I wished I could do the same. Instead, I stood there feeling like the last person to arrive at a joke everyone else already understood. Riley. Tyler's voice softened suddenly. Too suddenly. Can we talk later? I blinked. Later. When things calmed down. He said it like he was offering me a favor. Something inside me finally cracked. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just enough for reality to settle in. Tyler was not sorry. He was sorry he got caught. There was a difference. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the velvet box. Tyler's eyes widened. For the first time all night, he looked genuinely surprised. I held it for a second before setting it on a nearby bench. You do not have to worry about later, I said quietly. We are done. Tyler stared. The hallway fell silent again. I turned before he could answer and started walking away. My vision blurred slightly as I headed toward the exit. I heard footsteps behind me. For one terrible second, I thought Tyler was following me. He was not. It was Mason. Riley. I stopped but did not look at him. What? There are reporters outside. I frowned. What does that have to do with me? Mason hesitated for the first time. More than you think. Rain had started falling by the time we reached the arena exit. Not a storm. Just a steady October drizzle that turned the parking lot lights into blurry halos. I wrapped my arms around myself and tried to ignore the hollow ache sitting in my chest. Mason walked beside me without saying much. Somehow that was better than hearing empty reassurances. The moment the glass doors slid open, a burst of camera flashes exploded from the sidewalk. I froze. Reporters. At least a dozen of them. Microphones. Cameras. Phones pointed in every direction. My stomach dropped. Why are they here? I asked. Mason exhaled quietly. Because I scored the winning point tonight. I stared at him. That cannot be the only reason. No, he admitted. It is not. Before I could ask another question, somebody shouted his name. Then another voice. Then 10 more. The crowd surged forward. Questions flew through the air. Mason Walker. Are the transfer rumors true? Mason. Is it true you signed the endorsement deal? Mason. Over here. The noise hit me all at once. My head was already spinning from everything that had happened. The last thing I wanted was to become part of a media circus. I stepped back instinctively. Mason noticed immediately. Stay close, he said. The words were simple, calm, yet something about them made me stop moving. Not because he was ordering me, because he sounded genuinely concerned. The crowd pressed closer. One camera swung in my direction. Then another. A reporter frowned. Who is that with you? Great. Exactly what I needed. I turned away, hoping nobody would recognize me. Unfortunately, the universe clearly hated me tonight. A notification buzzed from my phone. Then another. Then another. My screen lit up like a Christmas tree. Messages. Mentions. Social media alerts. I glanced down and instantly regretted it. Someone had already posted a photo from the hallway. Not the whole scene. Just enough. Tyler standing with another guy. Me looking shocked. Thousands of views. Hundreds of comments. More arriving every second. Humiliation traveled faster than light. You should not read those right now, Mason said quietly. I had not realized he was looking. I shoved the phone into my pocket. A little late for that. His jaw tightened slightly. Then something unexpected happened. A reporter stepped directly into our path. Mason, can you comment on the rumors involving Tyler Grant and his boyfriend? My heart stopped. Not ex-boyfriend. Boyfriend. Present tense. The reporter was already looking at me. More cameras followed. Heat rushed into my face. I wanted to disappear. Mason did not. He stepped forward just enough to block half the cameras from pointing directly at me. Not aggressively. Just deliberately. No comment, he said. And leave him out of this. The reporter persisted. So you know him? Mason's eyes never left the cameras. I said leave him out of it. Something shifted in the crowd. Maybe it was the firmness in his voice. Maybe it was the fact that Mason Walker rarely sounded irritated. Whatever it was, people backed off slightly. Enough for us to keep moving. A black SUV waited near the curb. Expensive. Impossibly clean despite the rain. The kind of vehicle that belonged in advertisements. A suited driver opened the rear door immediately. I stopped. You have a driver? Mason looked confused. Yes. Of course you do. For the first time all night, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Close enough. We climbed inside. The door closed behind us, shutting out the noise. Silence settled over the cabin. Warm. Comfortable. Dangerous in a completely different way. I stared out the window as raindrops raced down the glass. You still have not told me why reporters care who I am. Mason hesitated. That alone caught my attention. He seemed like the type who always knew exactly what to say. Because somebody leaked a story 2 hours ago, he finally said. What story? He pulled out his phone and handed it to me. My pulse quickened as I read the headline displayed on the screen. National Volleyball, star Mason Walker secretly dating. Beneath it sat a blurry photo. A grainy image taken from a distance. A man standing beside Mason at a coffee shop weeks ago. My breath caught. The man in the picture looked disturbingly familiar. Not because it was me. Because whoever took the photo clearly wanted people to think it was. I looked up slowly. Mason was watching me. That is not me, I said. I know. Then why does it look like me? He did not answer immediately. Outside, the rain continued tapping against the windows. Inside, the silence stretched tight between us. Finally, Mason spoke. That, he said quietly, is exactly the problem. The drive should have felt awkward. Instead, it felt strangely quiet. Not comfortable. Not yet. Just quiet in the way a storm feels quiet when it is gathering strength somewhere beyond the horizon. I stared at the article on Mason's phone again. The blurry photograph. The headline. The implication. None of it made sense. Who leaked it? I asked. Mason leaned back against the leather seat. Nobody knows. That sounds suspicious. It is. The city lights slid across the windows as we drove through downtown. My phone buzzed again. Then 3 more times. I finally looked. Big mistake. Social media had turned my worst night into entertainment. Screenshots from the arena were everywhere. Photos of Tyler. Photos of me. Speculation. Rumors. Opinions from strangers who had never met me. One comment had over 20,000 likes. He got dumped and immediately chased a celebrity. Another claimed I had planned everything for attention. A third insisted I had been secretly dating Mason for months. I felt sick. Stop reading. Mason's voice was calm. People are horrible. People are bored, he corrected. There is a difference. I almost laughed. Almost. Another notification appeared. This one was from my younger sister, Emma. Are you okay? Mom saw the posts. Call me. My chest tightened. Great. Now my family was involved. As if tonight needed another disaster. The SUV finally stopped in front of a modern high-rise overlooking the river. Glass. Steel. Expensive enough to make me nervous. Where are we? I asked. Home. I blinked. You're home. For now. That answer somehow raised more questions than it answered. Before I could ask any of them, another phone notification appeared. This time it was a direct message. Unknown sender. Curiosity 1. I opened it. My stomach immediately dropped. The message contained a photo. Tyler sitting at a restaurant earlier that week. laughing with the same guy from the hallway. Beneath it was a single sentence. He has been cheating for 6 months. I stared at the screen. 6 months. Half a year. Half a year of lies while I planned a future that apparently only existed in my imagination. Riley. Mason's voice softened slightly. What happened? I handed him the phone. His expression did not change while reading the message. Somehow that worried me more. Do you know who sent it? I asked. No, do you think it is real? He looked at the photo again. Yes. The honesty hurt. I looked away. The city skyline shimmered beyond the glass entrance of the building. Everything felt unreal, like I had stepped into somebody else's life. We entered the lobby. Marble floors reflected warm, golden light. A concierge greeted Mason by name. Not Mr. Walker. Mason. Familiar. Respectful. Like this was not just a residence, but a place where people genuinely knew him. The elevator ride to the penthouse floor was silent. My reflection stared back from mirrored walls. Pale. Exhausted. Embarrassed. Mason noticed. You did nothing wrong. I laughed bitterly. The internet disagrees. The internet is not a jury. The elevator doors opened. His apartment was somehow even more intimidating than the lobby. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Modern furniture. A view worth more than my student loans. I stopped near the entrance. This is ridiculous. What is? Your apartment. For the first time all evening, a real smile appeared. Brief. Gone almost immediately. I will apologize to the architect. The smile disappeared, but the warmth remained. A strange feeling settled in my chest. Dangerous. Not because of who Mason was. Because of how safe I felt standing beside him. My phone buzzed again. This time the message came from Tyler. Riley, answer your phone. We need to talk. Another appeared immediately. Things are getting out of control. Then another. You are making this worse. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Not sorry. Not how are you. Not are you okay. Somehow this was my fault. Mason glanced down at the messages. His expression cooled instantly. You do not owe him a response. I know. Then why are you still reading them? I opened my mouth. Closed it. Good question. Another notification appeared before I could answer. This one came from a sports news account. Breaking. Sources claim Mason Walker's mystery partner may have been identified. Attached was a photo taken outside the arena less than an hour ago. Me standing beside him. The comments were already exploding. My stomach sank. Mason read the headline over my shoulder. Then he quietly reached for his phone. What are you doing? I asked. His thumb moved across the screen. Calm. Deliberate. Fixing a problem. A few seconds later, his official social media account posted a statement. Not an explanation. Not a denial. Just one sentence. Respect people's privacy before you invent stories about them. Within minutes, the post began spreading everywhere. Thousands of likes. Tens of thousands. Reporters. Athletes. Fans. The entire conversation started shifting. Not toward me. Away from me. It was subtle. Precise. Protective. I looked up. Mason was already setting his phone aside like none of it mattered. Why would you do that? I asked quietly. His eyes met mine. Steady. Certain. Because somebody should. Because somebody should. The words stayed with me long after midnight. I should have been grateful. Maybe I was. But gratitude and confusion were becoming impossible to separate. I barely slept. The guest room overlooked the river, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tyler in that hallway. Then I saw Mason standing between me and a wall of cameras. Then I saw that strange article again. The mystery partner. The blurry photograph. The questions that still had no answers. By morning, the internet had become even worse. I sat at the kitchen island scrolling through headlines while sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows. Some articles claimed Mason was secretly dating someone. Others insisted it was a publicity stunt. One popular account posted side-by-side photos comparing me to the blurry figure from the coffee shop. According to thousands of strangers, the case was solved. Apparently, I had become famous without my consent. Wonderful. A mug of coffee appeared beside me. I looked up. Mason was already dressed for the day, wearing a dark jacket and looking unfairly composed for someone who probably slept 4 hours. You should stop reading those, he said. You keep saying that. Because you keep ignoring it. I rolled my eyes and set the phone down. Fine. Then explain something. Mason paused. What? The photo. His expression did not change. What about it? Who was it? For the first time since I met him, he hesitated. Just slightly. But I noticed. Someone I used to know, he answered. That was not an answer. That was a carefully constructed wall pretending to be an answer. Before I could push further, The elevator doors opened across the penthouse. A man in an expensive suit walked inside carrying a tablet. He looked like the kind of person who scheduled meetings for billionaires and probably terrified accountants for fun. "Mr. Walker," he said, "the board meeting has been moved forward." "Board meeting?" I frowned. Mason nodded once. "Thank you, Nathan." The man glanced at me briefly before handing over the tablet. Then he left. Simple. Professional. Except one thing caught my attention. The document visible on the screen before Mason lowered it. Walker Global Holdings. My stomach tightened. I knew that name. Everybody knew that name. One of the largest privately owned companies in the country. Hotels, real estate, technology investments, sports ownership, the kind of corporation people studied in business school. Slowly, I looked at Mason. "Walker," I said. "As in Walker Global?" Silence. Mason closed the tablet. "Yes." My heart sank. "You are kidding." "No, you are not just a volleyball player." "No." Every answer felt like another piece of a puzzle I never agreed to solve. "You are the heir." Mason looked away for a moment. That tiny movement told me everything. Technically, I laughed once. Not because anything was funny. Because my brain needed something to do. Technically, I repeated, "You are the future owner of a company worth billions. Eventually." "And you forgot to mention that." His jaw tightened. It never seemed important. I stared at him in disbelief. Not important. The man lived in a penthouse overlooking the river, traveled with drivers, had assistants showing up with board meeting schedules, and somehow thought being the heir to a corporate empire was a minor detail. Something hot and unpleasant settled in my chest. Anger. Not explosive anger. Worse. The quiet kind. "How much of this is real?" I asked. Mason frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean everything." I stood from the stool. "The reporters. The article. The concern. The protection. Was any of it real?" His eyes narrowed slightly. "Riley. No. Seriously." The words came faster now. "Because from where I am standing, I spent yesterday discovering my boyfriend was lying to me while finding out the person helping me has secrets big enough to fill a skyscraper. I never lied to you. You did not tell me the truth either." Silence filled the kitchen. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Mason looked genuinely frustrated for the first time. "I did not tell you because I wanted you to see me as a person. And how was I supposed to do that when I did not even know who you were?" The question landed harder than I intended. His expression shifted. Just briefly. Regret. Maybe hurt. I hated noticing it. I hated caring. My phone buzzed before either of us could speak again. A new notification appeared across the screen. Breaking news. Walker Global Air linked to viral arena scandal. Attached beneath the headline was a newly leaked photograph. This time it was not blurry. This time it showed me standing beside Mason outside the arena. And underneath the image, someone had written 3 words that made my blood run cold. "We found him. We found him." The words sat on my screen like a threat. For a moment, the entire penthouse seemed to go silent. I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of traffic 30 floors below. My own heartbeat. Nothing else. Mason stepped closer and read the headline over my shoulder. His expression darkened immediately. Not anger. Something colder. More controlled. The kind of reaction that suggested this was not the first time someone had tried to turn his life into public property. "Give me your phone," he said quietly. "Why?" "Because reading the comments will not help." I almost argued. Instead, I handed it over. That alone surprised me. I had known him for less than 2 days. Yet somehow I trusted him more than I trusted most people I had known for years. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe that was exactly why I was angry. Mason set the phone face down on the counter. "Nobody is going to touch you." I laughed bitterly. "You cannot guarantee that." "Yes," he said calmly. "I can." The certainty in his voice should not have affected me. Somehow it did. I looked away first. The city stretched endlessly beyond the windows. Glass towers. Moving traffic. Tiny people living tiny lives. A part of me wanted to be one of them. Invisible. Ordinary. Instead, my name was attached to headlines I never asked for. "I should leave," I said. Mason was silent for a second. "Why?" "Because this is your world, not mine. This is exactly why you should stay." I shook my head. "You do not understand." "Then explain it." The frustration I had been carrying finally surfaced. Yesterday I thought I knew who I was. My voice sounded tired. Today I find out my boyfriend was lying to me. The entire internet thinks I am chasing a celebrity. And now I learn the guy helping me is basically royalty in a custom-made suit. Mason actually smiled at that. Briefly. Corporate royalty is significantly less impressive than it sounds. That is not the point. The smile disappeared. He understood that immediately. No, he said quietly. It is not. Silence settled between us again. This one felt different. Less sharp. More honest. Eventually Mason walked toward the windows overlooking the river. His hands disappeared into his pockets. For the first time since I met him, he looked tired. Not physically. Emotionally. Like someone carrying a weight nobody else could see. Do you know why I play volleyball? He asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. Because you are good at it? I am good at a lot of things. The answer sounded emptier than it should have. Volleyball was the only thing nobody could take from me. I frowned. Mason stared out at the skyline. My grandfather built Walker Global. My father expanded it. Everyone assumed I would inherit it. He laughed softly. Actually, assume is the wrong word. They decided. Something in his tone made me stay quiet. Every school I attended, every internship, every introduction, every conversation, my life has been scheduled since I was 12 years old. He turned toward me. Volleyball was the one thing they did not choose. For the first time, I saw past the headlines, past the penthouse, past the expensive suits and perfect control. Standing in front of me was not a billionaire heir. He was a man who had spent years living inside expectations he never asked for. That sounds lonely, I admitted. Mason looked genuinely surprised. Then he nodded once. It was. The honesty hit harder than I expected. We stood there for a long moment. Two people who had been lied to in completely different ways. Mine by someone I loved. His by a life that never really belonged to him. My chest tightened unexpectedly. I am sorry, I said. For what? Assuming things. Mason's gaze softened slightly. You had every reason to. A vibration interrupted the moment. His phone lit up on the counter. One message. Then another. Then several more. I glanced down accidentally. The sender name appeared repeatedly. Chairman Walker. His father. Mason did not move. He simply stared at the screen. The messages continued arriving. Finally, one preview appeared long enough for me to read it. Get rid of the boy before tonight's board dinner. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Mason locked the screen immediately, but it was too late. I had already seen it. He looked at me. I looked at him. Neither of us spoke. Then, for the first time since this nightmare began, I realized the biggest threat in Mason's life might not be reporters, gossip, or internet rumors. It might be his own family. The board dinner was scheduled for 7 o'clock. By 6:30, I already regretted agreeing to attend. The event occupied the top floor of a private hotel overlooking the city. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors. Executives moved through the room, carrying conversations worth more money than I would probably earn in a decade. I felt completely out of place. Mason seemed to notice immediately. You do not have to stay long, he said quietly as we stepped out of the elevator. That is reassuring because I am currently one awkward conversation away from hiding under a table. A faint smile touched his face. It disappeared the moment he spotted a group of older executives approaching. The warmth vanished. The armor returned. I hated how quickly I noticed the difference. The evening began politely enough. Introductions. Forced smiles. Questions disguised as judgments. Several people recognized me from the news. They pretended otherwise. That somehow felt worse. Across the room, I spotted an older man standing near the windows. Gray hair. Impeccable suit. Sharp eyes. Chairman Walker. Even before Mason quietly confirmed it, I knew exactly who he was. The resemblance was impossible to miss. His father studied me for less than 2 seconds before looking away as though I were a temporary inconvenience. The message was clear. I was not welcome here. I tried not to let it bother me. Unfortunately, the internet had already done enough damage that day. Every notification felt like another bruise. Then the disaster arrived. It started with a phone vibrating. Then another. Then 5 more. Conversations slowed. Faces turned toward glowing screens. A strange ripple moved through the ballroom. The kind that happens when bad news enters a room before anyone says it out loud. My stomach immediately tightened. Mason noticed too. He pulled out his phone. His expression hardened instantly. What happened? I asked. He did not answer right away. That scared me more than any headline. Mason. Slowly, he handed me the phone. My blood ran cold. A new article dominated every major entertainment site. Leaked contract exposes viral relationship scheme. Beneath the headline sat photographs of documents, signatures, payment schedules, confidential clauses. According to the article, I had supposedly entered a secret agreement to pose as Mason's romantic partner in exchange for money, publicity, and social media exposure. My vision blurred. "This is fake," I whispered. The article continued. More screenshots. More supposed evidence. Text messages discussing strategy. Images showing me entering Mason's building. Cropped photographs. Edited conversations. Lies carefully arranged to look believable. The comments were already exploding. Gold digger. Opportunist. Fame chaser. Professional. Victim. Every cruel word appeared faster than I could read. The room felt smaller. Hotter. Someone nearby glanced at me with open disgust. Another executive whispered something to a colleague. I knew exactly what they were thinking. They believed it. All of them. "This is not real," I repeated. My voice sounded weaker this time. Nobody answered. Across the ballroom, Chairman Walker looked almost satisfied. Not happy, just unsurprised. As if this outcome fit perfectly into a story he had already written about me. Then I saw something even worse. Tyler. He stood near the entrance speaking to reporters who had somehow gained access to the lobby below. A camera zoomed toward him. His expression was solemn, sympathetic, completely fake. "I tried to warn people," he told reporters. "Riley changes when attention is involved." The betrayal hit harder than the cheating. Somehow he was still finding new ways to hurt me. I stepped backward, then another step. Conversations continued around me. Quiet, judgmental, sharp as broken glass. Nobody said anything directly. They did not need to. I could feel it. Every stare, every assumption, every conclusion. For one terrible moment, I felt completely alone. I looked at Mason. He was still staring at the article. Silent, motionless, his expression impossible to read. 1 second passed, then 2, then 5. The silence stretched unbearably. My chest tightened. Suddenly, every fear I had buried rushed back. Maybe this was it. Maybe the scandal was too much. Maybe his family was right. Maybe his company mattered more. Maybe I had become a liability. Maybe he regretted everything. The room seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I looked away first. That hurt more than I expected. Then Mason finally moved. He locked his phone screen. Slowly, deliberately. The ballroom fell strangely quiet as he stepped forward. Not toward the executives. Not toward the reporters. Toward me. And for the first time all evening, every person in the room stopped talking. Every conversation in the ballroom died at once. The silence felt almost unreal. Hundreds of people stood frozen between crystal chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows while Mason walked. Directly toward me. He did not look angry. He did not look embarrassed. He looked certain. Somehow that was even more powerful. My heart hammered against my ribs as he stopped beside me. Not in front of me. Not behind me. Beside me. The choice felt deliberate. Equal. Public. Impossible to misunderstand. Across the room, cameras appeared almost instantly. Phones rose into the air. Everyone sensed something was about to happen. Mason turned toward the crowd. "Since everyone seems interested in discussing my personal life tonight," he said calmly, "let us discuss facts instead." Nobody interrupted him. Even the reporters stayed quiet. Mason held up his phone. One motion. Simple. Controlled. "The documents circulating online are fabricated." Murmurs spread through the room. "That is a serious accusation," one executive called out. Mason nodded. "Which is why I brought evidence." A large screen hanging near the ballroom stage suddenly flickered to life. I had not even noticed Nathan standing near the audio-visual controls until that moment. The image changed. First appeared the leaked contract. Then a second version appeared beside it. Then a third. My confusion lasted only a second before I understood what everyone else was seeing. The signatures did not match. The timestamps were impossible. Entire sections had been digitally altered. The supposed payment schedule contained dates from before I had ever met Mason. Gasps rippled through the room. "The original file metadata was recovered 30 minutes ago," Mason continued. "Every edit was traced back to a private account." Another image appeared on the screen. An account registration. A name. Tyler Grant. The room exploded into whispers. My breath caught. Across the ballroom, Tyler's face drained of color. For the first time since I met him, he looked genuinely afraid. Mason was not finished. The photographs were also manipulated. Another set of images appeared. Original versions beside edited versions. Cropped frames. Removed details. False captions. Every lie carefully dismantled one piece at a time. No shouting. No threats. Just facts. Cold, undeniable facts. The kind that left no room for argument. Tyler took a step backward, then another. Nobody looked sympathetic anymore. Nobody looked convinced anymore. Suddenly, he was standing alone. The way he had left me standing alone in that hallway. A strange sense of closure settled inside my chest. Not satisfaction. Something quieter. Freedom. Then Chairman Walker spoke. His voice carried easily across the ballroom. Even if the documents are fake, that does not explain the rumors. The room went still again. I felt my stomach tighten. Here it comes. The real question. Why was I here? Why was Mason protecting me? Why had he brought me into a world that clearly wanted me gone? Mason looked toward his father. Neither man blinked. Neither looked away. Years of history seemed to pass silently between them. Finally, Mason answered. You are right. The room waited. The rumors started because people saw Riley with me. He glanced toward me briefly. Just one look. Somehow it steadied my breathing. And because I allowed speculation to grow, the reporters leaned forward. Phones lifted higher. Chairman Walker folded his arms. Then tell them the truth. A long pause followed. Not uncomfortable. Important. The kind of silence people remember. Mason looked at the crowd. Then the cameras. Then finally me. His expression softened. Not much. Just enough. The truth, he said quietly, is that Riley never asked for any of this. The ballroom remained perfectly still. He did not ask for headlines. He did not ask for rumors. He certainly did not ask to become the target of a public spectacle. His voice stayed calm, but every word landed harder than the one before it. What happened to him was unfair. I swallowed hard. Something inside my chest hurt. The good kind. The dangerous kind. The kind that arrives right before hope. Mason continued. People assumed he was using me. Another pause. They were wrong. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because if anyone benefited from this situation, Mason said, it was me. My heart stopped. The reporters looked stunned. Even Chairman Walker seemed caught off guard. Mason exhaled slowly. I spent years surrounded by people who cared more about my name than who I actually was. His eyes found mine. Again, Riley never treated me that way. Emotion tightened my throat. The ballroom blurred slightly. So no, Mason said firmly. He is not using me. Another silence. Then the final blow. The one nobody expected. And whether this started as speculation or misunderstanding no longer matters. The cameras flashed nonstop now. Mason did not even glance at them. Because what I feel today is real. The words landed like thunder. Not loud. Just impossible to ignore. My breath caught completely. Around us, the ballroom disappeared. The executives, the reporters, the gossip, all of it faded into background noise. There was only Mason standing beside me under 1,000 lights, choosing me in front of everyone who mattered. Choosing me when it would have been easier not to. Choosing me when his own family wanted me gone. Choosing me without hesitation. And for the first time since this entire nightmare began, nobody was looking at me like I was a problem. They were looking at me like I mattered. For a few seconds after Mason spoke, nobody moved. The ballroom remained suspended in a strange, fragile silence. Then the first camera flash appeared. Then another. Questions erupted from every direction. Reporters rushed forward. Executives whispered furiously among themselves. Phones lit up across the room as clips of Mason's statement spread online faster than anyone could stop them. None of it seemed to matter anymore. I could barely hear the noise. My entire world had narrowed to the man standing beside me. Mason did not look away. Neither did I. Something had changed. Not because he defended me. Not because he exposed the lies. Those things mattered. But they were not the reason my chest felt too full to contain my heartbeat. The reason was simple. He had a chance to protect himself. Instead, he chose me. Chairman Walker broke the silence first. Mason. His voice carried the weight of authority built over decades. The room quieted slightly. Think carefully about what you are doing. Every eye shifted toward father and son. Mason remained calm. I have. Your future affects more than yourself. I know. Then do not throw it away. A long pause followed. Mason glanced at me briefly before returning his attention to his father. I am not throwing anything away. His voice stayed steady. For the first time in a long time, I am choosing something. The words landed harder than any argument could have. Chairman Walker studied him. The tension stretched across the ballroom. Then, unexpectedly, the older man exhaled. Not approval. Not surrender. Something closer to acceptance. The kind that arrives when a battle has already been lost. He looked at me. Really looked at me this time. Then he nodded once. It was small. Barely noticeable. But it felt like a door opening. Not completely. Just enough. The moment passed quickly. Reporters immediately resumed shouting questions. Nathan appeared at Mason's side like a man who had spent years managing impossible situations. The media team is requesting a statement, he said. Mason shook his head. Tomorrow. The board wants a meeting. Tomorrow. Nathan almost smiled. Understood. He disappeared into the crowd. I looked at Mason. You just told half the business world to wait. They will survive. I laughed before I could stop myself. The sound felt unfamiliar, lighter than anything I had felt in days. Mason smiled in response. A real smile this time. Warm, unguarded, dangerous for completely different reasons. Around us, the ballroom slowly returned to life. Conversations resumed. People moved on to new topics. The scandal that had consumed the evening was already beginning to lose its power. Funny how quickly public attention moved once the truth appeared. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked it. Hundreds of notifications. Messages from friends. Messages from family. Supportive comments replacing hateful ones. The narrative had changed. Not completely. It never would. But for the first time, I was not facing it alone. Another message appeared. Emma. Mom says she likes him. I stared at the screen. Then laughed again. What? Mason asked. Apparently my mother likes you. His eyebrows lifted. Should I be concerned? Probably. We walked toward the elevators together. Nobody stopped us. Nobody stood in our way. A few reporters called out questions, but Mason ignored them. The elevator doors opened with a quiet chime. We stepped inside. The noise of the ballroom faded the moment the doors closed. Silence returned. Comfortable this time. Real. I leaned against the wall and finally let myself breathe. So I said, what happens now? Mason considered the question. The city lights reflected across the polished steel walls. Now. Yes. The crisis is over. The lies are exposed. Nobody is pretending anything. A faint smile appeared. That sounds suspiciously like a question. Maybe it is. The elevator descended slowly. My pulse somehow felt faster than it had during the scandal. Ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. Mason looked at me for a long moment. Not rushed. Not uncertain. Just honest. Now, he said quietly, we start with the truth. The doors opened into the lobby. Rain shimmered beyond the glass entrance. The city glowed beneath a sky filled with silver reflections. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Mason offered his hand. Not dramatic. Not for cameras. Just a simple choice. An invitation. A beginning. I looked at it. Then at him. Then I placed my hand in his. Warm. Steady. Real. Together we stepped out into the night, leaving behind the headlines, the lies, and the people who tried to decide our story for us. For the first time since everything fell apart, I was not walking toward a future someone else had planned. I was walking toward one we would choose ourselves. And somehow, under the city lights and the soft October rain, that felt like the best beginning of all.